Okay, Carlos, thank you for joining us today. It's awesome to have you here. You are an entrepreneur, adventure filmmaker, and YouTuber with experience at Red Bull and with GoPro. But before all that, how did you get started in your filmmaking journey?
Well, it's been like a really long journey, to be honest, because I started actually making videos when I was probably like 12 or something. My brother actually got like the initial GoPro. Like I think we were probably one of the first people in Spain that ever got a GoPro, and and then yeah, just started making movies on that when I was like 12, and I made like a lot of shitty videos for a long time, and eventually, like from like 5-10 years down the road, I started getting more like commercial work done.
Oh, there's a couple of things there I find really interesting. Well, the first is what's the story of you guys being some of the first people in Spain to get hold of one of the original GoPros? How did that work?
Well, I'll probably not the original GoPro. It was kind of like, I think it was the Digital Hero. I still have it with me actually. I keep all the GoPros. I've got like from the number 1 till up to 9, which is recording on this now. So yeah, like my older brother, he's always been kind of like, like a tech geek, like looking at like what's new and up and coming, and probably he was following a blog, and like at least for like the first 2 seasons when we were skiing here, like I did not see a single person like have a GoPro, the classic GoPro on the head, and people were always like, what the hell is that, blah blah, blah. And then yeah, that was like, it was basically because of my older brother.
Oh, okay. Well, good for him. That's so you're early on, I guess, in the adventure filmmaking, kind of having the onboard camera. You guys got experience a couple of years before everyone else.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because he does adventure filmmaking as well, I think. I've seen his motorbiking.
Yeah, my younger brother does. Yeah. So like I've got two brothers, and we're actually quite close, like in age group. So we grew up together. I guess that's like where my personality comes from, like more adventurous, more kind of like yeah, it came a lot from my brothers. So my younger brother does like a little bit of like adventure motorbike trips as well.
Okay, I guess, was that very much a family thing then, you guys going out and doing your adventures together? Because I think if I look back in some of those earlier skiing videos that you mentioned, as you say, you're around 12, so obviously there's some family influence there as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I'm the way I am because of my family. There's no doubt about that. Like, and especially on the travel side, like when we were kids, like I was very lucky to like our parents, like my dad, he's a doctor, and he used to take me down to Africa with him on his trips. Like he was going on the summers, and I got like a lot of like young exposure to like situations where, otherwise people like wouldn't. And especially like, in remote destinations in Africa, like when I was, at 10 or something like this. So I guess like my personality like has become like from my childhood, and like always travels like with my dad. So and I'm very like grateful for it, to be honest, because I was very lucky at a young age to experience these things, and it's just become easy for me, like kind of in the future, like doing the things that I do.
That's incredible. Yeah, I guess not many 10-year-olds get the opportunity to do that. So good on your dad for bringing you along, man. Wow. Okay, so I guess from this kind of lifestyle, how early on did you choose to start picking up a camera and recording and capturing things?
So basically, it's kind of like been second nature to me, like being, especially with the GoPro, like just filming little videos, again, skiing videos, like mountain bike videos and stuff like this. But then, like I always did it and I've always done it as a kind of like as a hobby. When I went to university, I didn't study film. I don't know why. Like I always thought it was kind of like, yeah, more like as a hobby rather than kind of like a potential job or something like this. And I actually studied like management science up in the UK, but I had the opportunity to kind of go and exchange and go and travel a little bit. So I was in Hong Kong for a year. I was in Munich for another year, and then eventually moved to Australia. And within like those years at university, I always took time to, whenever I had time or money, to be honest, because I didn't have much money when I was at uni, was to travel, and like travel in a very kind of like budget constrained way. So it put me in situations where it was kind of like more like adventure travel, I would say, probably. And yeah, just filmed a lot of that. And as I put it on YouTube, and it started kind of getting traction, and then that led to like one thing led to another, and it just eventually became kind of like a career path for me, and sort of my job for a while.
So it's a hell of a job, it's got to be said.
Mm.
So those adventures when you're at uni, I'm guessing these were around the times you did the first major Southeast Asia film, backpacking, and also the Mongol Rally, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, that was actually before going into university. To be honest, I skipped that bit. So yeah, before going into to university, I took a year off, kind of like before figuring out what I wanted to do, kind of thing, and yeah, I did a classic Southeast Asia, traveling around, and I got into filmmaking there. Like I did a little video, which I think got picked up on YouTube a little bit. Then, well, I watch it now and it's so bad because it's like it's been so it's so long. I'd do so many things different. But yeah, like I got like experience on kind of like filming travel trips, and then my first big kind of like trip would probably be like the Mongol Rally when we drove from London to Mongolia on a 800-pound car, and to raise money for charity. And I kind of like documented I like documenting the whole thing, and kind of like I remember editing that like my first week at uni actually. So when I got back from the trip like a week later, I was starting university, and I actually edited that during my freshers week. I wasn't very social. I was just editing because yeah.
That's so cool. So was that because obviously there's no time limit for the Mongol Rally, but obviously you had kind of an imposed one there. Was that a pressure to finish early and push on through the night?
Yeah, well, in a way, yes, actually. So we had up to 6 weeks, I think, to do it, and we did it in 5 weeks. Yeah, because like we were all the same age, and we were all kind of like starting university, so it was a bit of a time limit. And like for those of you listening, just to add a bit of context, like the Mongol Rally is like it's a charity race that's organized every year, where you get a shitty car and you drive it from London to Mongolia. And the objective is like, it's not a race in a sense, it's not a rally like a race rally. It's more like you take your time and you take the route whatever you want. And it's just kind of like the whole objective is that you kind of like go muck about and go and find kind of like a little bit of discomfort, I would say, rather than you go to these kind of unusual countries. We call it like the stands, and yeah, it was a very good experience having, especially we were 4 guys in a car, in a tiny car, for 5 weeks. It was very interesting.
Because I think the whole focus is like the unroute. There's no set route. You guys just kind of, you stumble on, make your way. And the whole point of having a shitty car is obviously it breaks down. You're forced to chat to locals and kind of experience the countries in a way that you wouldn't necessarily experience them if you were just naturally heading through as a backpacker.
Yeah, that's totally right.
Are there any highlights from that trip that have some good stories behind there that didn't make the final cut?
I actually filmed most of it, probably say. So most of the interesting stuff is probably on the video, but I don't know, something that comes from the top of my mind. There were so many different things. Like one time, like in Kazakhstan, we decided to we actually had 24 hours to get out the country. Because our visa was expiring, and we kind of when we were doing the visas, we did them 4 months earlier, and we didn't realize we got kind of our date mixed up. So when we got into Kazakhstan, we said your visa expires in 24 hours, so you need to hurry up. And so we drove literally for 30 hours straight from the Kyrgyzstan border to the Russian border in Siberia, and it was just driving through the night, and we had 4 flat tires. At one point, we started at a petrol station, and someone got kind of a shotgun out and told us to leave in Russian. I don't know. The whole day was kind of very interesting, and it was okay, we were in Kazakhstan for 24 hours, literally.
Wow, that's a hell of an all-nighter, it's got to be said. Well, yeah, no, because I remember in the video there's a part where you don't have you didn't include the footage, but you said you had someone point a gun at you. So I was always like, oh lord, that's a hell of an experience. So obviously, did you make it in time for the border then? If you went for 30 hours, but the visa was only for 24, did you have any issue or?
No, so we actually, like, as soon as we crossed the border, we just kept going because it was like throughout the night, and we went straight to kind of like the Mongolian border, and we actually slept right outside the Siberia, Russia to Mongolian border. We slept outside, which I wouldn't recommend people to do that because we pitched a tent, and then it was like the middle of the night again, and then all of a sudden like you'd hear horses. And they came, and it was like policemen, like all with flashlights, and like, what are you doing here? It's like, the border's closed, we're just trying to sleep, and they thought like we were trying to break in or whatever. And it was just like, I wouldn't recommend to pitch a tent like right in next to a border fence, like in the border between Siberia or Mongolia.
Well, it worked. It got the job done, didn't it? That's so funny. That's so funny. God, were there any kind of big downsides, big negatives on that trip where you were kind of really worried for your health or safety or?
No, actually, I don't think so. But probably maybe easier at the time, but now it's like it was like 5 years ago now, so actually more like probably 7 years ago now. So not at the top of my head, like. Maybe like close to like getting into car accidents because obviously we drove through so many hours and through so many cities. We actually saw like live, like I think up to 3 car accidents where we actually saw them happening, and once we nearly crashed. So that was kind of like I would probably say the most dangerous side of the trip, but otherwise maybe I think that's about it.
What's your why then, out of curiosity? What made you choose to do the Mongol Rally just before university?
Oh, so for me, it's like, like I came from a mindset, like, from my family where I was lucky to travel, with my dad from a young age to kind of like these remote destinations, but I'd never really done it on my own. And, I was 18, like really young, and it was kind of like, I worked for like 6 months, saved up some money. And I set myself a budget, and was like, okay, I can actually do it by myself now. So it was my why was really for personal growth, really, to spend like those 6 months traveling. It was at a young age. I'd highly recommend it to everyone. Like for me, it was like totally like personal growth and self-learning before going into university. And I feel like I actually like the people that I met that were first year university that ended up doing a gap year or had experience outside of school. I think they were like a lot more mature and, knew more or less what they wanted to do, rather than just, following the classic, you go to school, you go to university and you just do all these steps and you don't really have that experience, by yourself. And then, you might figure out that university is not for you and you want to do something else, but yeah, I think my why was really like for personal growth.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that. I think particularly the traveling before university as well, because I really agree with the conversations, at least in my experiences that I've had chatting to people who have traveled before university, do seem have the air and maturity about them.
And it's not necessarily just like the fact of like traveling in a sense. So it's just getting out of where you come from. It's like, so you're used to a culture, you're used to a specific set of norms, like a specific set of people. So like you don't necessarily need to be traveling just before university. You can just go live somewhere else and maybe go work at doing something, or like go do volunteer or something. You don't like, it's not like you don't need to be on holidays all the time. Like, and for me, that was very clear. It's like, it wasn't like a year where I was going to be on holidays all the time. It was like I had for 6 months, I was in Paris, I was learning French and I was working there. That's where I made my money to go traveling. Like I set up like a little side business to get some income. And then it was just like, I wanted to do specific trips. Like I've always been a fan of motorbikes, and in Southeast Asia, like I wanted to do a motorbike trip. That's when I did it in Vietnam. And then again, the Mongol Rally is something that like we really wanted to do, and it had that charity aspect on the side as well, which that was like another why.
No, I'm a big fan of your both the Southeast Asian Mongol Rally videos. I remember they're really something special. You mentioned something about your side hustles there, your side projects. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience in the entrepreneurship. Do you want to talk about your stages of going through various different projects and how you got into the whole entrepreneurship business?
Yeah, sure. So like I've always kind of like been a fan of entrepreneurship. So when I was at school, actually, like I used to sell. I used to buy stuff in China at an online websites, and that was like that was before kind of like Alibaba or AliExpress. Like I was contacting people in China and like seeing like iPhone cases or special headphones that you could get kind of like for cheap, and I was buying them for myself. And then at school people were asking like, hey, where did you get that? And because like I don't know, here in Europe there would be like, I don't know, €100 headphones, and I would be getting them for like €10. They would obviously be fake, but like I was happy with how they worked and stuff like this. And my classmates started asking like, hey, can you get me a pair and stuff like this? So I just made a poster at school and started selling, importing stuff from China. And then eventually, like I started seeing that it was working at school. So I just put ads on eBay, on Amazon, and I wasn't even touching the product. I was just ordering it from a guy in China, and it was sending it. It was ultimately what it was drop shipping. I know what drop shipping is right now, but like I didn't know what it was back then. And I was just like, now it's like super popular. But yeah, that would probably be like 10 years ago. So that was kind of like, I made some money to be able to pay for my travels during.
How old were you, if you don't mind me asking, when you were doing this?
17. I was, yeah. Wow. And I used to sell cigarettes at school. I never smoked. So I used to sell cigarettes at school. And I've never ever smoked, so it's kind of like I was importing, because I went to school in the UK for a bit, so it was very cheap. Tobacco was very cheap in Spain, so I used to import cheap tobacco and sell it at school, which was quite risky. But I was making a profit from that. That kind of like allowed me to pay for some of my initial travels. And then I didn't really get into the entrepreneurship world for a few years. So I was at school. I started doing filming jobs. As part of my school degree, I had to do an internship, and I started working at GoPro, and I worked with them for a couple of years before I kind of like set up my first proper startup, I would say. Like all the other ones, like they weren't necessarily companies. They were just like side gigs when I was a kid, and they weren't very serious, and they didn't last very long. They were like just a couple of months stints. But my first startup was a travel startup called Friend Theory that I set up with like my best friend Carlo and Guillaume, who was the technical guy. And we started in Australia, and that's when it started working, and that's when I decided to kind of like quit my job at GoPro and go full time on this. And that journey was a 3-year journey, which the whole thing, like the idea. That's how I met you, actually. You were one of the early users. You were one of the early users at Friend Theory. So, but yeah, so that's been a roller coaster of a ride. And that's been like that I would say like my journey as a kind of like as a first time founder, which ultimately for various reasons and for COVID especially, like we actually had to shut it down a couple months ago, but like right now I'm in the midst of taking all those learnings from this 3-year journey and actually starting something new. So yeah, and hopefully there'll be more to come.
Hey, I'm excited. Well, I'm excited to hear all about the new project, obviously when that rolls around.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, a 3-year journey of starting a company and doing that whole life cycle, the educational experience from doing that for 3 years, what did you get out of that? Was that more than, say, university? Was that more than...
Yeah, like, so I see a lot more positives rather than negatives in a way. So I feel like I've actually done an MBA, like because like the connections that I've made and everything's been self-learning. So like one thing that I've kind of like realized and that I think I've done is to really focus on kind of like self-learning. So it's like if there isn't a thing that we didn't know how to do or there was a problem that was happening, you either do it yourself or no one's going to do it. It's like and if you don't do it, like the project doesn't advance and it dies. So basically, like I feel like I've definitely learned a lot, like in these 3 years. But the one thing that I think that's missing from, and I think it's like I've never really had experience at a big company, like at a structured company. So in a way, I've done my trade-off of like I've done like a lot of self-learning, which has been incredibly fulfilling and really really good for me actually. So on like if you don't do it by yourself, like and you don't learn it by yourself, no one's gonna do it. So in a way, you have to be very disciplined on like saying like on self-learning, because like no one's teaching you anything. So it's like you have to teach yourself. So I've actually like enrolled in a lot of online courses and I took them very seriously. Probably like I've taken it way more seriously than university, because this has real impact. Like if you learn about something and you make it work, then it has an effect on your company. Whereas at university, if you don't learn it, maybe you fail an exam, but it's like it's really like a direct impact on like what you learn. It's like what you get out of your project in a sense. And you have to be very disciplined on that, on saying like, hey, this is like if I don't do this, no one else is going to do it. And it can like sometimes, like if you were lazy about it, then your startup is obviously just going to fail.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I guess I think firstly, it's the whole doing it yourself attitude. I think you've clearly learned far more by doing that, running that company over the 3 years than, as you say, an MBA. I mean, an MBA is a piece of paper that you're charging for the privilege of the 3 years to study under someone else, but I think there's a lot more... it must be a lot more satisfying to know that you've done it yourself with your very small team off your own shoulders. I think that's something real special.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like when it came down to the day where we said like, oh, we actually have to shut down the project, and we had to notify the investors that like this wasn't going forwards and stuff like this. Obviously, it was a very hard decision to come through. But at the end of the day, like Carlo and I, we sat down and said like, what we've gotten out of this project is like so much more than than we could have ever asked for. And right now, like I feel like I'm in a much more better position to start something new, or like to go work somewhere with like really like legit experience on like how to do things.
No, definitely a hell of an experience as well. How many young 20-year-olds can say that they've done a project that significant? So I guess the other thing is your focus on, you mentioned personal discipline. Are there any personal philosophies that you place a lot of value in? Because particularly one of your more recent films, which is very, very artsy, I liked it, was The Art of Slowing Down, I think. And very much touched that more kind of spiritual side of knowing to slow down and know yourself more. Are there any kind of personal philosophies that drive you?
Yeah, so basically, like I filmed that film at a time where it was kind of like we're going through the shutdown of Nido, of the startup that like we pivoted to. It was really like a time of like self-reflection and be like, okay, like what we've done in the past few years, and like we've always gone like kind of like full steam. We never kind of like for 3 years like I've been traveling a lot, or like been doing a lot, but I never like really put a pause and just kind of like reflected and on like what we've been doing, and like that trip kind of was like allowed me to kind of like take a break, and that's kind of like the aim of the film, that like sometimes it's good to slow down, appreciate what you have, and and really like you can say no to things sometimes, and like you don't have to say yes to everything, and that like if you look kind of like more inwards, you get know yourself more, and then you can make the right decisions going forwards in a sense.
No, I like that. There's yeah, as I say, it's just interesting philosophies to hear, and kind of to hear the background of the context behind that film, because it is far more emotional, I'd say, than previous things that you've made.
Yeah, I think like throughout my my filming career, or like the experience I've been doing videos, like at the beginning, like I guess like everyone starts just like by just filming, like, hey, I'm going traveling, I just film it and then just put it out there. But like at the end of the day, like I think the most impactful films is like the films that have a story behind it, and they have a why on why you're doing that, and what are you gaining from that trip or that moment or that thing. And that's something that I've learned throughout my time at GoPro, like that, like really the most powerful films, at least long content films, are films that kind of like have a story. And like YouTube might be kind of like a bit tricky, because like sometimes it's like usually it's like, if you put out more content, you get more views, you get more subscribers, you get more like you grow a lot more. But for me, it's like usually I've kept the philosophy of trying to just put out stuff that I'm proud of, and stuff that's kind of like more meaningful, rather than just putting content just for the sake of putting content. And yeah, that's why I've always kind of kept it as a side thing, and I've never gone full on YouTube, and I'm not sure I will, because it requires that you just put out content that like quality, you put quantity over quality. And for me, like really the important thing is like just telling meaningful stories, and yeah.
No, I really like that. I really, really like that. Yeah, as you say, because it's very much a side hustle for you. It's very much a hobby, kind of. Would you say that's... Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's a hobby that I if I get good opportunities, I take them. But it's like, and if I feel like I want to put something out, I put it out there. But I don't have the pressure to just like constantly keep posting. And I've never taken up YouTube kind of like full time. It's always kind of been on the side. And I've actually considered like during this time to potentially take it full time. And it's something that I'm still debating. But if I do ever take it full time, I hope that and the listeners listening there is like, keep me accountable for this, like that I don't just start putting vlogs that are meaningless in a sense. Like I want it to kind of like have some meaning behind it.
Well, I think what's interesting is obviously the personality that you give off in your videos, by choosing to include you as a person and you on your adventures and your emotions, and involving yourself so much in the story of what you're experiencing. I think a lot of the fans, a lot of the people who like you for you, not just your content, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think because of that kind of personality base, the idea of a film, or say a vlog of Carlos Costa doing something, I think is more interesting than, say, a generic person doing something, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, you've established yourself as that,
Yeah, like what I try and do is like just kind of like the films that I put out is just to be authentic and just be myself, and that's why I don't put that much content all the time, because like I do travel quite a lot, yes I make quite a lot of films and I move around, but like that's not my daily life 100%. Like like I work, like I've had a startup for 3 years, and I was at a company before, and it's just like I don't like, this is not my full-time thing, so it's like and usually like those moments that like people see, it's like, yeah, that's when I'm traveling, but like I don't want to kind of like just film my whole life all the time in a way, and I don't want to have to fake something that I'm not, so that's why I'm just putting the things that are interesting to me, and like the things that are not necessarily as interesting to me, I just don't put it out.
Did you, out of curiosity, vlog any of the life in the 3 years of the startup?
Yes. Well, like
I know that's not published, but just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Well, I didn't necessarily vlog most bits, but we actually did quite a lot of moving around. Like we went through a couple accelerators. We went one in Israel. We were in San Francisco for a bit. We started in Australia. We did like a whole European roadshow for like 40 days. We spent traveling around Europe meeting users, and one of them was you. You came down to London. So I did film that, and that was also like to tell the story of what Friend Theory was, and again and I think that drove a lot of the growth of Friend Theory. That by the time we shut down Friend Theory and we moved to Nido, which was a communication app that we were working on. We at the peak we had 25,000 users, and a lot of the growth came from that organic and authentic like storytelling of like, hey, we're just three guys that are in Australia. We want to build this. Who wants to take part of this? And we're filming our experience on us trying the product, us meeting users, us kind of like of the story of how the startup was evolving, and I think that was very important as well for me to document, to kind of like see and I love watching those videos back and seeing like, okay, that's how things were going back then, and that's how it was evolving. So I think it was a very interesting thing to document.
No, I liked the I was a big fan of when you were touring around Europe, that video that came out of it. It just looked fantastic for everyone who got involved there. Okay, so obviously very work centric, work based, work focused. Sorry. What about, how did you get, as you say, you started with that internship with GoPro? I believe that's in Berlin. I think was that office.
Yeah, that was in Munich. So during my second year at university, I had the opportunity to kind of like do a year called like a placement year, where I had to do an internship at a company. And I was studying management science, which is very mathematical and has nothing to do with GoPro. But like I always like, hobby was a filmmaking was a hobby for me. Like GoPro was like a company that I really, really admired. And I was also very interested in tech. So I applied to a lot of companies. So I applied to, GoPro was one of them. I was applied to Facebook, Amazon, Google, all the tech companies to kind of like go on an internship and to do whatever. So, but no one got back to me ever. Like I didn't get a single reply. And that was so frustrating. And I was at Barcelona at the Mobile World Congress, and GoPro had a booth there. So I decided to go kind of like go to meet them and just like present myself like, hey, this is me, I'm looking for an internship, will you hire me? And I went 3 days in a row, and I was probably that annoying kid that was just like, hey, hire me, I want an internship. And I just gave them my CV and kind of like hope for the best. And out of the blue, a couple of weeks later, I got a message on LinkedIn by someone that was working at GoPro that they wanted to do an interview with me. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is awesome. So I had the interview with them, and they started reading my CV. And it turns out that, they tried to call me a bunch of times with the number that I had in my CV. And it turns out that I was living in Hong Kong at the time, and that was my Spanish number. So that was just bouncing all the time. And then they tried emailing me, and I was that stupid that I had a spelling mistake on my email. And it's those times where you read your CV like 1,000 times, and the description I probably skipped over it because I watched it so many times, and I was missing a dot on my email. So they tried to email me a couple times, and I never replied. And that was the CV that I sent out to all the companies.
No!
So I never got a reply from any of the companies. But luckily, somehow, I was very lucky that, Guido, the guy that reached out to me at GoPro, he was kind of like interested in my profile and gave me a chance by actually looking me up on LinkedIn and reaching out. And I ended up getting hired in the marketing team, and the rest is history. So it's kind of like it was a very embarrassing interview, but it was also like I think it would have probably been, I don't know, I'd call it fate, call it whatever, but like the fact that kind of like my favorite brand and probably my favorite company that I wanted to work with, like they were the ones that kind of like reached out. And maybe like, I would have applied to like a lot of different companies, and maybe I would have taken a job at a company I wasn't that excited about, but yeah, luckily things worked out. And
That's hilarious.
I started at GoPro doing marketing, and then eventually, like, as soon as when I was in the company, I eventually transitioned to the media department, and when I stepped up my role from GoPro, I kind of like managed to keep them as a client, like doing freelance work for them, and then I started working on my startup.
That's awesome. That is hilarious, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah.
On all those applications, you had the man. Wow. Well, yeah, as you say, call it fate. I guess it's the fact that they were so impressed with you that they went to the effort of hunting you down. I guess that's quite reassuring.
I guess like I think like, for example, the Munich office at GoPro, that was something that they did very, very well. Is that they hired a lot for brand fit, especially in the marketing department. So it's like people that they felt strongly would fit in the team, no matter the kind of like their skills, but they had like a very good, strong brand fit, and that created kind of like, it was a very, very special time. And like I always like I have really good fond memories from my time at GoPro in Munich, especially like the Munich office. The European team was their like the HR department, and the way they hired was really, really cool.
Yeah, no, well, they sound like a lovely group of people, it's got to be said. Wow, no, because I remember there's a video where you're like riding on a toy, like a toy car thing around the offices, and I was always confused. I was like, I can't tell if this is sponsored, but I know I like GoPro more because of this video, because it showed the office life that you were living, and I was like, oh wow, that's a hell of a place to work. So what were the circumstances of that, out of curiosity?
That was like literally just like we had a little go-kart at the office, and since we were encouraged to kind of like get to know how the cameras worked and stuff like this, I just did a little video for it. So yeah, that was like a normal day at the office, I would say.
Just for context, yeah, that's a bit of a vlog where, how would you say, you just day at the office playing various different sports, and then you ended up surfing, right, in the river?
Yeah. So like actually GoPro had in Munich they had a couple surfboards that you could take from the office, and some of the interns, we went in the afternoons, and we were very bad. Everyone hated the people with the GoPro stickers at the ice pack in Munich because we were terrible.
Oh wow! Well, what, as in terrible at surfing?
Yes. Like I was gonna say. Like,
no, you say.
No, like river surfing is very different than ocean surfing, and yeah, I was terrible.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I've never experienced river surfing. I just know that you've done quite a few surfing films, so yeah. No, improved quickly. Okay, well, something we quite like to talk about here is kind of the impact of social media, how doing YouTube as a side hustle, how you got started in that, how that's impacted your life. Would you say that part of the reason that they liked you as a person, as you say, as a fit for the team, is to do with your YouTube channel?
Yeah, like when I probably got hired at GoPro, they probably did take like a little bit a peek at my YouTube channel, especially that like all my stuff was shot on GoPro, and I think my YouTube channel has definitely helped in kind of like as a personal image for and it's opened like a lot of doors for me. So I think it's definitely helped to see kind of like for people to get to know like more or less how I am, because really it's like the stuff I put up on YouTube is like, that's just me. And that's why I don't put that much stuff out there, because it's like, if I do a trip, I film it and I put it out there, and I don't try and put out stuff that I don't do, or like I don't like faking stuff in a way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I guess because as well with you working for GoPro, there's something. It's one thing obviously to hold the camera in a booth and be able to talk about the technical specifications, and it's it's a completely other thing to obviously do as you have done, which is absolutely batter the things for months on end and prove that they work in terms of, they're not going to break, and B, the filmmaking possibilities, the greater possibilities that you have with a camera that is so uniquely small versus something like a DSLR.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, actually, like, so for GoPro specifically, it's like when I got hired, I wasn't in the media team at all. So like I had nothing to do with like filming or anything. It was just like I was just there to like my role was to work with athletes and like work through their contracts, like sponsored contracts and like plan events and all that. So like the job description had nothing to do with filming. But once I was in there, like they realized that like I like filming, that I wasn't terrible at it. So I kind of like transitioned.
No, that's really cool. No, I like that it seems like good office, good environment to talk to each other. Obviously, once you're in, you get to know each other more and develop through that. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm aware this has become very much a GoPro conversation. So this is the last I'll ask about it was how, because you've done a couple of the creator summits now, which is very much pure filmmaking. That's very creative based. Is there anything about those experiences?
Yes, so the GoPro Creator Summit, basically it's like every couple of years they get GoPro athletes and family members and creators from GoPro, and they invite them to a specific location to present, to showcase a new camera and for people to play around with it and kind of like film different like all the different experiences that they're living in. And they've held them in Hawaii, in Australia, in different places. But this year specifically, since we're in the midst of a pandemic, and they couldn't get like 80 people together at one specific place from all over the world. What they did is like they took that budget and gave it to the creators and said like, hey, go and do a little adventure where you're from and film it and come up with a video from it. And so that's what kind of like we did this year. So I had 3 days to kind of like just plan a trip around where I'm from, which is Barcelona, and film it, play around with the camera, and have some fun. So I actually invited like an old colleague of mine that was a GoPro, David, like he's from Munich, and my co-founder Carlo, and we just did a trip around here, around Spain.
Was that on the boats, right?
Yeah. So we went scuba diving, and then we took the car and went up to the mountains, and just did some mucking around. It's work. It's hard work.
Okay, that's really cool. Okay, so what about, I guess, your first 1,000? Obviously, the theme is what films, or obviously it's going on 7 years ago now. But do you remember what films you did and what processes you got to your first 1,000 subscribers on YouTube?
Yes. So like my first film that I ever did, like I remember it perfectly as well, and I did it with my older brother, and we did it with a program, Windows Movie Maker, I think it is. And what we did, we were at home, and we had a little tricycle, and we actually decided it was like a point and shoot camera, a really old point and shoot camera, and we duct taped the point and shoot camera to our helmet, which was like a pre-GoPro kind of thing, and we duct taped then the point and shoot camera on the tricycle, so you got like those angles, and it was just us going down a hill, and we had like really shitty effects. And I wish I think I must have it like in an old hard drive, like, and it actually probably wasn't even a hard drive, it was one of those discs, and that was kind of like the first thing I remember editing. And I think that was the first. It's never published on YouTube. YouTube probably didn't even exist. And then on YouTube, it was like I go to Mallorca in the summer, so it was probably like a trip to Mallorca or something like this, which like terrible 10-minute long vacation videos. Like that's probably how I got my exposure to learning how to film and edit.
Okay, what about the kind of the use of social media and how you've grown to how you've chosen to grow on different platforms? So, for example, I would use the word pioneer because there was a film that you did on Instagram which made me kind of step back and go like, oh wow, this is a really good use of Instagram, and it was the mini Grand Prix that you guys did in lockdown, which, just for context, it's I think you and your brother doing maybe a 20-meter loop, a 50-meter loop perhaps, on mopeds just around a driveway. But you shot it as if it was, traditional sports coverage with all the sound effects, and I found that hilarious because I hadn't seen any type of film done like that on Instagram.
Yeah, that was probably because, again, lockdown, weekend, bored. We have, 2 little mopeds at home. And, the whole family were quite fans of MotoGP. My older brother actually works at MotoGP. He's, an engineer there. So we have, gear mocking around. We were actually racing, my brother and I. We weren't even filming it. And then we're actually, this is pretty comical. Let's actually film it and take it as if it was a proper Grand Prix. So I got my dad involved, as I'm in the pit lane and stuff like this, and yeah, I put it out there.
Yeah, that's a great video. But I might be wrong here, but was it filmed vertically on smartphones? I might be wrong there. I'm pretty sure it was.
No, it was filmed on a 360 camera. So it was a 360 camera that was attached to my bike, and as we were following, then I had the angle I could choose between filming my brother, who was always behind, or myself, who was in front. So it was kind of so it was this.
I think while at the moment we've had the technology for 360 cameras, it's rarely that we've actually seen them used well in an artistic sense, in a creative sense. Because obviously the technology is wonderful, but if you can't use it for storytelling, then it kind of goes to waste. And I think as well with the 360 camera, you used one with your on the boat. I remember on a long pole, which allowed you to go from inside the boat all the way out to hanging it all the way over the water, which I thought was a really creative use of that technology.
Well, to be honest, I think 360 cameras are one of the most creative cameras out there, because you have you can do so much with them. You can choose what to look at, when to look at it, and you can move from different kind of you can go from just seeing a person to seeing going to tiny planet where you can see everything, and you can get very creative. The only downside from 360 cameras is I think they're still very prosumer, so you need a good laptop to edit it. It takes a lot of time to edit the footage, to go through each keyframe, and a normal consumer, it's still relative. It's easy, but if you want to get really creative and do really flowy stuff, it's still very kind of prosumer.
Okay, which is I guess how digital cameras were back in the day 30-40 years ago. There was something I was thinking about in regard to modern technology, modern apps, as you say, prosumer, with certain technology becoming more easy to use over time. I hypothesized that some of the best filmmakers that are going to come out, the Oscar winners within the next 20-30 years, are going to be starting on TikTok. Do you reckon there's any validity to that idea? Or
maybe in a way, what I'm not on TikTok. Again, I think I'm more of a long form content type of guy, longer stories that they have time to breathe and you have time to get to know the characters and whatnot. That's why I'm on YouTube. And TikTok is very short form, very that in a way it's very kind of just meaningless videos in a sense, but then some of them are extremely creative, because it's okay, you have 15 seconds to get people's attention. It's how do I do it, and you have 15 seconds to tell a story. It's the same as kind of writing a book. You have unlimited you can write a book unlimited kind of pages to write it, but then the hard bit really is how do you condense that, how do you tell that same story in a chapter, and how do you tell that same story in a paragraph, and how do you tell that same story in a sentence. It's the same kind of going to long short form content. I think the most creative and people that are is how do you tell a story in 15 seconds or less, and that's in a way that's why TikTok can be very creative, but for me it's I don't think it's for me. I'm not on TikTok, and I might be in the future, but right now, again, yeah, it's I try to be authentic on the stories that I tell, and I try and put content that's kind of like more meaningful. And TikTok, I feel like the algorithms is just like people dancing all the time and stuff like this. So hopefully it changes for the good in a sense. So it's like you can, okay, how do you tell a good story in 10 seconds or less, and how do you get people's attention in that?
Full disclosure, I'm not on TikTok either. It's just the ones that I keep seeing coming out. I'm just constantly positively surprised by, as you say, people's ability to, you know, maybe they are unable and lack the skill to tell long form stories and tell as you say, a kind of meaningful story over 10 minutes, but they're learning how to do it in 10 seconds and they're doing it every week. And I think just by repeating that process, they're becoming better storytellers. But as I say, it's not for me. I'm not on it yet. It's very interesting to me, though.
It's funny because like how TikTok, well, musically started. It was initially like the whole proposition. It was like that. It was for learning. It's like, you know, like people don't have 20 minutes to watch videos, to watch, for example, like a lecture. So it's like, let's deliver short form videos that are educational. So it was like educational videos. But then like they started seeing that people started using it, like, you know, the videos that got more traction were like not necessarily educational videos. And it was like kind of like videos that were more like towards the entertainment side. So it was lip syncing, music and stuff like this. And then that's when it changed to Musically. And then, you know, eventually became TikTok.
Okay. I think it's reasonable to say that audiences' attention span has decreased over time. You know, what with the rise of social media. Has that ever, I mean, in regard to, for example, looking at audience retention, or has that ever irritated you? Because obviously you very much favour and excel in longer form videos on YouTube.
To be fair, like I haven't really paid that much attention to it in a way, but like what I do, and like so like when I edit the videos, like, you know, will people want to watch this? And like, or especially like, will I in the future want to watch this? And like, will it be entertaining for me? And what I do at the beginning to follow kind of like this trend of getting people's attention, like if you look at my videos, usually they start with some form of context. So like they start with kind of like an interesting bit, like a snippet of what happened during that specific video or during that specific trip. So it might be like, you know, if I had a crash during a motorbike trip, maybe I add that at the beginning, and it just like, it gets people's attention. It's like, oh, there's something gonna happen. And then you start slow, and then you break it off and kind of like, and then you start from the beginning. But it's called a hook. So you use a hook in the first like 10 seconds of video, 5 seconds of video, you get people's attentions, you get people interested. And then like you can more kind of like longly tell the story.
That's nice. Yeah, keeping people watching. Who would you say your kind of who would you say your biggest filmmaking influences towards what helped you develop your style, what you saw and wanted to learn from or use?
So for me, like if we're talking about YouTube kind of sense, I'm a big fan of Casey Neistat. I think like his films are always kind of like, you know, he can talk about his day, but like he makes it interesting, and it's just like, you know, like his filmmaking style, and again, it's authentic. Like I feel like he's like definitely influenced me. Then Abe Kitzelwitz, like who's like the GoPro guru. He was like the first GoPro guy. Like he, I look him up for most of the GoPro stuff. Like I'd highly recommend people go follow him. And probably like what's it called, the twins, Jack and Finn. Like when I watch them, especially now what they've gone, they've moved away from YouTube and started talking about, you know, like real problems and like, you know, being activists towards like climate change and stuff like this. I've taken big inspiration from them too as well.
Okay, so where do you see then your content evolving over the next call it 2 years? Let's call it 2 years on YouTube. Where do you reckon you're going to be?
So to be honest, like I don't know, because I'm starting a new project like from the tech side, and I do a lot of filming work that's not actually necessarily on my YouTube. That it's like I shoot videos for different brands or for different people, and it lives in other places. Like for instance, yesterday, no, actually like 2 days ago, I was shooting a music video for Vance Joy, the singer. So that's obviously going to go on his channels and stuff like this. So it's like I don't see my YouTube channel. I probably see it like kind of like as it is. It's just like if I do trips and I do interesting stuff that I want to share, I will keep filming and stuff like this. And I've started working a lot with a brand called Tropic Film from Barcelona, which is again like they're trying to change the way people travel, to travel more consciously, to travel more sustainably, and I'm kind of like helping them structure like, you know, how the content will be, the content will what content they're trying to shoot. And again, like I'm trying to go for more the authentic side, you know, think about what you're filming and why you're filming it, and you know what story you're trying to tell, rather than just like a video of people doing backflips in a sense, you know. So it's like kind of like have a more of a story behind those videos.
That's awesome. Yeah, very much the why, very much story focused, as you say. That's really interesting. So you see very much your YouTube is a hobby, and it's always been a hobby, kind of a side thing.
Yeah.
I think that's, if you don't mind me saying, that seems quite a healthy way to kind of view it, for sure. Particularly in this day and age, that what we're seeing more recently on YouTube and kind of mental health and how creators over time have started wavering a little. That sounds quite a pleasant deal to be going on in you.
Yeah, no, I think like for me, like if I were to take up YouTube full time, which I've never done, like I'd probably be doing very different stuff, and you always have to kind of like give in onto like, okay, what's going to drive you growth, what's going to drive you more viewers, more subscribers, and I feel like I would lose a little bit of the essence. So yeah, again, like I take YouTube as a hobby, and I've been very lucky to have been able to grow it to like over 100,000 subscribers, and I get brand deals from it. But it's just like since it's not my full-time job, I don't feel forced to do it, and I don't feel forced to put content that, you know, I don't want to put out. And yeah, hopefully in the future, you know, I have more time to tell stories that I like, and you know, make films that I'm passionate about. And if I do, you know, like if I have an idea and I want to film it, I go out and do it. It's just like a matter of like probably like more like time constraints of like, do I have the time to go and do this, and do I have the time to go and tell this story and stuff like this.
Okay, well, I guess my last kind of consideration then would be, we've seen before, as you mentioned with Casey Neistat, kind of the attraction of vlogging the startup culture. Is that something, do you think you'd be interested in doing?
Potentially, yes. So it's like at the end of the day, is like what I put out on YouTube is like one for me to look back and like to like, hey, you know, like it's, you know, a lot of people take writing as a practice to kind of like get their thoughts together and stuff like this. And for me, like this form is kind of like filmmaking. It's like, you know, how do I tell a story of why this startup works and how it works, and how will I think people like will be understand it and to be entertained watching it. And for me, that thing is like filmmaking. So in the future, yes, if it makes sense for me to be in that kind of form, of just like have tell my experience of, you know, like this is how a startup works and how it's going, I could see potentially myself doing it. Yes.
Awesome. Wow.
The good thing about YouTube is that like if you can grow an audience and you can kind of like grow a fan base, then it's a lot easier to launch products and ideas to people, because you have some kind of like recognition, or like people value your ideas more because they're following you. So if you can manage to do that, and I've been lucky to kind of like been growing an audience. So if I feel like there's something that I feel like my audience will like and will enjoy, and something that I'm building, I definitely make a video for it and like kind of like promote it to my audience, saying like, hey, you know, because I feel like those people will actively listen to me more, rather than, you know, just putting it out there to people that kind of like necessarily maybe don't know me.
That's very much the kind of jab, jack hook, right? The Gary V.
Yeah.
Provide something of value. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. No, I think we're pretty much good to finish up there. In which case, Carlos, thank you so much for joining me. This has been an absolute delight hearing these stories and about your background and how you've been brought up as a filmmaker. Yeah, thank you for joining.
No worries. Thanks for everything, Tom. And have a good day.
You too. Thank you. All right.